An ecstasy is a thing that will not go into words. It feels like music. The words of Mark Twain to begin another webcast. Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson. As one of my sources said, everybody knows what music is, and yet it is difficult to give a definition to it. So I'll let the music speak for itself, accompanied by the heartbeat of the internet. Music consists of two elements, movement and sound, which are organized into expressive patterns. Music may not always be beautiful, because the ideas that composers wish to express through their music are not always beautiful. Often, they may want to tell us of anger, hatred, or fear. But from the simplest folk song to the greatest symphony, all music seeks to express thought and feeling. Even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. The words of Khalil Gibran. As I do this show today, it is my 24th wedding anniversary. And happy anniversary, Lydia. As my main source goes on to say, the scientist will define music as a system of vibrations. All sound is caused by vibration carried to the brain through the medium of the eardrums. What is commonly called noise is produced by irregular vibrations. A musical sound is produced by vibrations which are regular. The origin of music is as varied as the population of the planet. This source, a very old edition of the Britannica, goes on to say, the Bible tells of Jubal, the father of all such as handle the harp and pipe. An old Spanish book tells how Jubal listened to Tubal-Cain's forge and noticed how the sounds made by pounding the anvil differed in pitch. He tried imitating these sounds with his voice and soon found himself singing high tones and then low tones. The Greek myths tell of Pan, the god of woods and fields, of flocks and shepherds, the inventor of the shepherd's pipe. Pan sighed through the reeds on a riverbank and heard his breath produce a mournful wail as it passed through them. He broke them off in unequal lengths, bound them together, and he had a musical instrument. End quote. One of the great artists of the pan flute is Zamfir. If you want to hear the instrument played the way it was intended, listen to his music. We just explored how some ancient people believed music began. My source goes on to say, such tales are, of course, pure fancy, but they suggest how man may have first learned of the things that make music. He learned to produce tones of different pitch so that he could play melodies on them. End quote. Suffice it to say, whatever the true origins of music in the past, all primitive people had some sort of music for celebrations, as well as to soothe the broken hearts of the ancients. The myth of Pan and the flute has been told in stories as well as in poetry. This is called a musical instrument by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. What was he doing, the great god Pan, down in the reeds by the river? spreading ruin and scattering ban, splashing and paddling with hooves of a goat, and breaking the golden lilies afloat with the dragonfly on the river. He tore out a reed, the great god Pan, from the deep, cool bed of the river. The limpid water turbidly ran, and the broken lilies a dying lay, and the dragonfly had fled away ere he brought it out of the river. High on the shore sat the great god Pan, while turbidly flowed the river, and hacked and hewed as a great god can, with his hard, bleak steel at the patient reed, till there was not a sign of the leaf indeed, to prove it fresh from the river. He cut it short, did the great god Pan, who laughed while he sat by the river. The only way since gods began to make sweet music they could succeed, and dropping his mouth to a hole in the reed, he blew in power by the river. Sweet, 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 O Pan, piercing sweet by the river. Blinding sweet, O great god Pan. The sun on the hill forgot to die, and the lilies revived, and the dragonfly came back to dream on the river. Yet half a beast is the great god Pan, to laugh as he sits by the river, making a poet out of a man. The true gods sigh for the cost and pain, for the reed which grows never more again, as the reed with the reeds of the river. In Daphne Rose Kingma's book, A Garland of Love, Daily Reflections on the Magic and Meaning of Love, published by Canary Press, was this, and I quote, "There are certain experiences, running, dancing, making love, listening to music, reading scintillating prose, that take us out beyond the boundaries between flesh and spirit. When we are in this pure, undifferentiated state of being, separated not even from ourselves, we are in the state of love." End quote. And if you ever feel that you're out of tune with your partner, then consider this. It's called Love's Sonata. Again, Daphne Rose Kingma writes, "The hallmark of a good relationship is that it is generally harmonious. Whatever other characteristics, flaws, or faults it may have, in its essence, it is harmonious. At its core, it possesses an intrinsic sense of just rightness. This means that even in the midst of all the things that go awry in your relationship, even in the presence of all the things that you yourselves perpetrate upon it, you will come again and again to the still point at its center, the basso continuo, against which the ever-altering melodies of your relationship will endlessly play themselves out. So, no matter how out of tune your relationship may seem at the moment, allow yourself now to feel again the resonance at its center. There is no more powerful thematic resolution than acknowledging the harmony of your individual instruments." My main source for this webcast said this about harmony, and I quote, "With the Greeks, music was not an independent art, but was associated with poetry and the drama. Poets were themselves singers, and their poems were intended to be chanted. The Greeks used a number of instruments, such as harps, lyres, and flutes. They never performed in harmony in the modern sense of the term, although they sometimes sang with voices an octave apart. Early musicians, both in and outside the church, constantly experimented with part singing, and gradually developed harmony as it is known today. This was indeed important, for it added a third dimension to music. Harmony has enabled music to stand on its own feet as an independent art." End quote. Have you ever wanted to write music? There is a way that doesn't involve notes and musical instruments. This is called My Symphony by William Ellery Channing. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich. To study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly. To listen to the stars and birds, to babes and sages with open heart. To bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. Servant and master am I, servant of those dead and master of those living. Through me, spirits immortal speak the message that makes the world weep and laugh and wonder and worship. I tell the story of love, the story of hate, the story that saves, and the story that damns. I am the incense upon which prayers float to heaven. I am the smoke which palls over the field of battle where men lie dying with me on their lips. I am close to the marriage altar, and when the graves open, I stand nearby. I call the wanderer home. I rescue the soul from the depths. I open the lips of lovers, and through me the dead whisper to the living. One I serve as I serve all, and the king I make my slave as easily as I subject his slave. I speak through the birds of the air, the insects of the field, the crash of waters on rock-ribbed shores, the sighing of wind in the trees, and I am even heard by the soul that knows me in the clatter of wheels on city streets. I know no brother, yet all men are my brothers. I am the father of the best that is in them, and they are fathers of the best that is in me. I am of them, and they are of me, for I am the instrument of God. I am music. That just about brings this webcast, the heartbeat of the internet, to a close, but one last thought. It was Henry Ward Beecher who believed, of all the music that reached farthest into heaven, it is the beating of a loving heart. Good night, sweet dreams. Happy anniversary, Lydia. I'm Don Jackson.